Have you ever known something was a mistake, yet pursued it with belief anyway? Perhaps it was a relationship your rational mind knew was a dead end, but your heart kept investing in. Or a career path that drained your soul, yet you clung to it because it was the sensible thing to do. It's that strange, dissonant feeling of being both the driver and a helpless passenger in your own life, watching yourself make a choice you know you will regret, yet unable to turn the wheel. You see the error in plain sight. You can list all the logical reasons to stop, but some deeper, more powerful current pulls you forward, compelling you to believe in the mistake. Why? Why this strange loyalty to our own errors? Why do we hold on so tightly to beliefs and paths that cause us so much pain? The answer is not found in abstract theory, but in a stark, true story from the pages of history. Let us take you back to the mid-19th century, to a place of screams and sawdust, to the dawn of modern surgery. A surgical theater then was not a place of sterile hope, but a chamber of visceral horror. If you were a patient, the ordeal you faced was so agonizing that many, upon hearing the word surgery, chose to end their own lives rather than endure the scalpel. The primary problem was pain absolute, unbearable, consciousness-shattering pain. Then, in 1846, a breakthrough that felt like divine intervention. A dentist named William Morton demonstrated that a simple inhaled gas, ether, could render a patient completely unconscious, erasing all sensation of the torment. It was a miracle. The news spread like wildfire. In less than a year, Morton's discovery of anesthesia was adopted in operating rooms across the entire globe. The benefit was immediate, undeniable, and visible to all. The surgeon's work became easier, and the patient's survival, or at least their endurance, was no longer a question of sheer willpower against unimaginable agony. A clear problem met a clear solution, and the world changed overnight. But surgery had a second, more insidious demon: infection. After surviving the blade, a terrifying number of patients would succumb to what was then called ward fever. Their wounds would fester, their bodies would rage with heat, and they would die. Not from the original injury, but from an invisible killer that stalked the hospital halls. This was not just a tragedy, it was bad for business. Dead patients, after all, don't pay their bills. Then, in the 1860s, a British surgeon named Joseph Lister had a revelation, inspired by Louis Pasteur's germ theory. He proposed a radical idea. What if this invisible killer was carried on the very hands and instruments meant to heal? What if, he posited, doctors simply washed their hands before touching an open wound? What if they sterilized their tools? Lister meticulously documented his findings, showing a dramatic drop in mortality rates in his wards. He traveled the world, presenting his life-saving evidence to any surgeon who would listen. And almost no one did. For decades, his pleas were met with skepticism, ridicule, and outright hostility. Surgeons, respected men of science, continued to operate with unwashed hands, in coats stained with the blood and grime of previous operations, using tools that were merely wiped clean between patients. They scoffed at the idea that something they couldn't see could be the cause of such devastation. They clung to their old ways, their familiar rituals, even as the evidence mounted, even as their patients continued to die needlessly. This brings us to the heart of our question. Why was one life-saving truth, anesthesia, embraced in months, while another, antisepsis, was resisted for decades? The answer reveals the fundamental architecture of our own minds, the very reason you might still believe you are unworthy, even when evidence of your value is all around you. The simple, uncomfortable truth is this: our beliefs are not governed by logic. They are governed by emotion. They are shaped not by what is true, but by what feels true, by what is easy to see, and by what protects our existing sense of self. The surgeons of the 19th century were not stupid. They were educated, dedicated men, but they were human. The benefit of anesthesia was visceral and immediate. You give a patient a gas, they go limp, they stop screaming. The cause and effect are as clear as day. It made the surgeon's job profoundly less traumatic. It was a direct, tangible benefit to them. But Lister's germ theory? It was abstract. The enemy was invisible. The benefit of patient not dying several days later was a non-event. It's hard to get excited about something that didn't happen. Furthermore, adopting Lister's methods came at a cost. It required time, effort, and money to buy sterilizing agents and clean gowns. It meant admitting, implicitly, that their own hands, the instruments of their healing, had been instruments of death. This created a powerful psychological conflict, a phenomenon Leon Festinger would later call cognitive dissonance. It's the profound mental discomfort we feel when we hold two contradictory beliefs, or when our actions conflict with our self-image. For a surgeon who saw himself as a savior, the idea that he was also a source of fatal infection was so dissonant, so threatening to his identity, that it was easier for his mind to reject the new evidence than to shatter his self-concept. It was easier to call Lister a crank than to wash his hands. And we do the exact same thing. We are all, in our own ways, the stubborn surgeons of the 19th century. We hold on to beliefs that are comfortable and familiar, and we resist information that threatens our identity, no matter how true or helpful it might be. A belief is not just a thought, it's a piece of our world, a pillar in the architecture of our identity. To question it is to risk bringing the whole structure down. If this idea of invisible resistance, of cognitive dissonance, is already sparking a new perspective on a struggle you've been facing, a belief you've been unable to shake, take a moment to subscribe to Mind Decode Explained. We journey through these intricate landscapes of the mind together, exploring the hidden maps that define our lives, so we can finally start drawing our own. Think about a belief you hold about yourself. Perhaps you believe you're bad with money. The evidence feels overwhelming, doesn't it? You remember the credit card debt, the impulsive purchase, the anxiety when you look at your bank account. Your mind, in a process known as confirmation bias, actively seeks out and focuses on these pieces of evidence. It's like wearing glasses that only let in a certain color of light. You start to believe the whole world is that color. Your brain conveniently ignores the times you saved money, made a smart financial choice, or successfully budgeted for a month. Those instances don't fit the narrative, so they are dismissed as flukes. The belief that you are bad with money protects you from the discomfort of trying and failing. If you are inherently bad at it, why bother trying to learn? The belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is the insidious loop of a limiting belief. The belief shapes your behavior, and your behavior then generates more evidence for the belief. If you believe you are socially awkward, you will enter a party with tense body language. You'll avoid eye contact. You'll speak hesitantly. Other people, responding to these cues, might keep their distance. And you walk away with proof. See? Nobody wanted to talk to me. I really am awkward. The belief and the evidence become a closed circuit, a feedback loop from which escape feels impossible. It's a prison where the bars are made of your own thoughts, and you are both the inmate and the guard. One of the most common misconceptions we must dismantle is the idea that we can simply think our way out of these beliefs with positive affirmations alone. Telling yourself, "I am confident and loved," 100 times in the mirror while a lifetime of collected evidence screams, "You are a fraud," is like shouting at a hurricane. It might make you feel proactive for a moment, but it doesn't change the underlying weather pattern. It can even make things worse, creating more cognitive dissonance between the affirmation and your deeply felt reality. It's like those 19th century surgeons just saying, "I believe my hands are clean," without ever touching soap and water. The declaration is meaningless without a corresponding action that produces new, tangible evidence. So how do we break free? If we cannot simply will ourselves to believe something new, what is the path forward? The surgeons didn't change their minds because of a single brilliant argument. They changed their minds because slowly, painstakingly, the evidence became undeniable. A few brave surgeons adopted Lister's methods. Their patients survived. Other hospitals saw their success rates and, driven by a combination of scientific curiosity and professional competition, began to experiment themselves. The evidence shifted, and over decades, the belief followed. This is our blueprint. We cannot directly wrestle a belief into submission, but we can, with intention and courage, begin to change the evidence on which the belief is built. You don't change the belief first, you change what you do. You become a gentle scientist in the laboratory of your own life, and you start running new experiments. The first step in this process is to gently and honestly identify the so-called evidence that currently supports your limiting belief. This requires a quiet moment of radical honesty. Not to judge yourself, but simply to observe, like a detective examining a crime scene. Let's take the painful belief. I am not worthy of a happy, loving relationship. What is the evidence you present to the jury in your mind? Perhaps it's a past relationship that ended in betrayal. The story you tell is, I was abandoned because I am fundamentally flawed. Perhaps it's a childhood where love felt conditional or absent. The story is, I was never good enough to be loved then, so I am not good enough now. Perhaps it's the fact that you are currently single. The story is, see, no one wants me. Write these pieces of evidence down. Look at them not as objective truths, but as stories you have told yourself, interpretations of events. Notice how many of them are rooted in the past, and how many are abstract feelings rather than concrete, present-day facts. Now we move to the second, most crucial step, re-examining and reinterpreting this evidence. This is where we challenge the stories. As the writer Anais Nin is often credited with saying, we don't see things as they are. We see them as we are. Your interpretation of an event is not the event itself. Yes, it is a fact that a past relationship ended. But is, because I am fundamentally flawed, the only possible interpretation? Could it be that you and that person were simply incompatible? Could it be that they had their own issues that had nothing to do with your worth? Could it be that the breakup, while painful, was a necessary event that cleared the path for something better? This is not about toxic positivity or ignoring the pain. It's about expanding the narrative. It's about recognizing that you have been focusing on one interpretation, the one that hurts the most, and that other, more empowering interpretations are equally, if not more, valid. Let's apply this to the surgeon's dilemma. Their evidence was, we operate, and sometimes patients die of fever afterwards. Their interpretation was, this is an unavoidable tragedy, a natural risk of surgery. Lister offered a new interpretation. You operate with unclean hands, and that introduces germs that cause the fever. The facts were the same patients were dying. But the interpretation changed everything. It moved the problem from the realm of fate to the realm of responsibility, and therefore solution. Similarly, you can reframe your own evidence. I grew up in a broken home can be reframed from I am damaged goods to I am a survivor who understands resilience and has profound empathy for others' pain. I failed at that business. Venture can be reframed from I am a failure to I am someone who is brave enough to take risks and has learned invaluable lessons for my next attempt. As psychologist Carol Dweck outlines in her groundbreaking work on mindset, this is the shift from a fixed mindset, which says, I am what I am, to a growth mindset, which says, I am always learning and evolving. Your past does not define your worth. It only provides the raw material for the story you choose to write today. The third step is the most active and, ultimately, the most transformative. You must begin to deliberately create new, contradictory evidence. Beliefs wither without reinforcement. Your task is to starve the old belief and feed the new one. This is done not through grand, terrifying leaps, but through small, consistent, and courageous actions. If you believe you are unhealthy and lazy, don't vow to run a marathon tomorrow. That's setting yourself up for failure, which will only reinforce the old belief. Instead, put on your shoes and walk around the block for 10 minutes. That's it. You have just created a new piece of evidence. You are now, factually, a person who went for a walk. Tomorrow, maybe you drink an extra glass of water. New evidence. The day after, you choose a salad over fries. More new evidence. Each tiny action is a pinprick in the giant balloon of your old belief. Individually, they seem insignificant, but cumulatively, they are an unstoppable force. If you believe you are socially awkward and uninteresting, don't force yourself to be the life of the next party. Start smaller. The next time you buy coffee, make eye contact with the barista and offer a genuine, "Thank you. Have a great day." That is a successful social interaction. New evidence. The next week, ask a coworker a question about their weekend and actually listen to the answer. More evidence. These aren't just actions. They are experiments that yield data. And the data will begin to show that the old hypothesis, "I'm awkward," is flawed. What you are doing is building a bridge of new experiences, plank by plank, to a new reality. As Brené Brown teaches, this requires vulnerability. It is vulnerable to go for that walk when you feel lazy. It is vulnerable to risk a moment of connection when you feel awkward. But it is in that vulnerability, in that willingness to act, in spite of the fear, that real change is born. You are behaving as if you are the person you want to be. And in doing so, you slowly, undeniably become that person. The evidence accumulates until it reaches a tipping point. The new belief, "I am a person who takes care of their health. I am a person who can connect with others," is no longer a hopeful affirmation. It is a conclusion based on a growing mountain of data. It took decades for the medical community to fully embrace antiseptic surgery. It was a slow, stubborn process of old guards retiring and new generations, trained with the new evidence, taking their place. Your own change might not be instantaneous. It is a process of unlearning and relearning, of gently dismantling an old identity and bravely building a new one. Be patient with yourself. Be as compassionate with your own mind as you would be with a scared child or a dear friend. There will be days when you slip back into old patterns, when the old belief roars back to life. That's okay. That is part of the process. It doesn't erase the new evidence you've collected. On those days, simply acknowledge the feeling without judgment, and then take one small new action. Wash your hands, just for today. Look around now. The world of medicine is a testament to Lister's victory. The modern operating room is a temple of sterility and safety, a place where miracles are performed daily because we finally accepted a difficult truth and changed our behavior. The ghosts of ward fever are gone, banished by the simple, powerful act of cleaning our hands. Your mind can become this modern operating room. It can become a clean, well-lit space, free from the infections of old, limiting beliefs. You can learn to sterilize your thoughts, to choose which ones to allow into the sacred space of your self-concept. The journey begins not with a war against your own mind, but with a simple, quiet act of curiosity. It starts by questioning the stories you've been told and telling yourself they are just that, stories. And a story can always be rewritten. You are the author. The evidence of your past does not have to be a verdict that sentences you to a limited life. It can be the prologue to a story of transformation, of resilience, of becoming. The power was never in changing the belief by force. The power is, and always has been, in changing the evidence, one small, brave, and beautiful action at a time. So ask yourself, what is one piece of new evidence, no matter how small, that you can create for yourself today?